All right, buckle up, everyone. We're heading deep into South America for this one. Today's deep dive is all about the Yacaré Caiman. And we've got a really cool article here, just brimming with fascinating facts about these crocodilians.
Oh, I've skimmed it, and it looks like we're going to be covering it all. From those crazy teeth that give them like a permanent grin to how they bounce back after being hunted so heavily.
Yeah, I'm really interested to get into all of that. But maybe we should start with that unique look. The article uses the word armored to describe their skin.
Armored doesn't even cut it. Think tough, bony plates called scutes covering their entire bodies,
Yeah.
almost like nature's suit of armor. It protects them from predators and even helps them, regulate their temperature. Pretty efficient, right?
Totally. And then on top of that, they've got those bony ridges along their upper jaw, makes them look even more intense. And then, of course, there are the teeth.
Ah, yes, the teeth.
Ah,
Unlike alligators, some of the Yacaré caiman's teeth are always visible, even when their mouth is closed. It's like a built-in warning system for anything swimming by.
it's wild. You'd think that would make hunting tougher for them, but they're actually known for taking down piranhas. Can't even imagine how those battles go down in the water.
Well, the way I see it, those visible teeth aren't really about stealth. They're more about power. Their jaws and teeth are specially adapted for crushing the bones of fish like piranhas. It gives them a serious edge in those murky waters.
So, less about being sneaky and more about being able to overpower their prey.
Exactly. And speaking of murky waters, let's get to their preferred hangout spot, the Pantanal. It's this massive wetland in South America. And it's basically a Yacaré Caiman paradise.
I'm picturing this lush, almost prehistoric looking environment.
You're not wrong. Think like a huge network of slow-moving rivers, lagoons, and flooded grasslands. It's just teeming with life, from giant water lilies to all sorts of fish and birds, and of course, caimans.
And it sounds like the Yacaré Caiman fits right in, not just surviving there, but thriving as a top predator.
Absolutely. The Pantanal's got everything they need. The slow-moving water, the dense vegetation, perfect for ambushing prey. Plus, there's tons of fish and other creatures to keep them well fed.
The article mentioned that they're what they call opportunistic carnivores. What does that actually mean for their diet?
It means they're not picky eaters, basically. They'll eat pretty much anything they can catch and overpower. We've already talked about piranhas, but they also go after fish, amphibians, birds, small mammals, even turtles.
Turtles! Wow, okay, I guess those strong jaws come in handy for crushing shells.
You got it.
So, how do they actually hunt? Are they actively chasing down prey, or is it more of a sit-and-wait situation?
Oh, they are masters of stealth,
Yeah.
lying in wait, totally still, blending right into the vegetation
Yeah.
until SNFE. They're incredibly patient hunters, and they've got these incredible adaptations that let them stay almost completely submerged while they're scanning for prey.
Wait, what kind of adaptations? I need to know more about this.
Well, their eyes and nostrils are positioned right on top of their heads. That way they can breathe and keep an eye out, all while staying hidden beneath the surface. It's like having built-in periscopes.
Wow. So they're not just tough and powerful, but they're incredibly well suited to that environment too. Makes their success in the Pantanal even more fascinating.
It really does. But it wasn't always smooth sailing for the Yacaré Caiman. They faced a pretty serious threat in the past. Overhunting.
Right, the article mentioned that, a pretty stark reminder of how we humans can impact wildlife.
Yeah, their skin was really sought after for the leather industry, which led to, a pretty drastic decline in their numbers. For a while, their future was looking pretty uncertain.
That's sad to think about, especially considering how crucial they are to the Pantanal. But the article also mentioned that things have actually turned around for them.
They have, thanks to conservation efforts, including like laws to protect them and programs that promote sustainable practices. They've made an incredible comeback.
So from being hunted to being protected, that's quite the story of resilience. But what does it mean for their conservation status today?
Well, they've gone from being a species of concern to being classified as least concern, which means that while conservation is still super important, they're not considered to be at immediate risk of extinction anymore.
That's fantastic. It makes you wonder, what were the specific strategies that led to such a turnaround? And are there any lessons we can learn from their success that could be applied to help other species?
Those are really good questions and definitely ones that we should explore further as we continue our deep dive.
It really is inspiring to hear about a species making such a strong comeback. But how did they do it? What were the key ingredients to their success?
Well, one big factor was putting strict hunting regulations into place. By banning the unregulated hunting that had, really devastated their numbers, it gave them a chance to recover.
So it was about taking away that pressure that was pushing them towards extinction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about restrictions. It was about finding ways for people to benefit from their presence without, harming them.
Okay, that's interesting. How do you turn a potentially dangerous predator into, like, an asset for local communities?
That's where sustainable management programs come into play. These programs often involve things like controlled egg harvesting and ranching initiatives.
Wait, are we talking about farming caimans here?
Kind of, yeah. Ranching programs collect a certain number of caiman eggs from the wild and raise them in controlled environments. Then some of these caimans can be used for their leather, which makes sure there's a sustainable supply without impacting those wild populations.
So it's kind of a win-win, right? The caimans are protected, and people can still benefit from the leather trade.
Exactly. And the money made from these programs often goes right back into conservation efforts, creating this, positive feedback loop.
That's really smart. It shows that conservation can be economically viable, too. But I bet it wasn't easy getting everyone on board with that approach.
You're right. It took a lot of collaboration. Conservationists, local communities, government agencies, they all had to work together. They had to address concerns, build trust, and really show the long-term benefits of these sustainable practices.
It's a good reminder that conservation isn't just about science, right? It's about people, too, and finding solutions that work for everyone involved.
Couldn't agree more. It's about understanding that complex connection between humans and nature. And speaking of which, maybe we should dive a little deeper into their role in the Pantanal ecosystem.
We've talked about their diet
Yeah.
and how they help keep fish populations in check, but what other impacts do they have?
Well, as apex predators, they play a crucial role in regulating the populations of other species. This helps to maintain balance and make sure that no single species becomes too dominant.
So they're kind of like the guardians of biodiversity in the Pantanal.
That's a great way to put it. They help ensure a healthy and diverse ecosystem, which ultimately benefits everyone, even humans.
It all comes full circle, doesn't it? But the article did mention that there can be conflict between caimans and people, especially in areas where their habitats overlap with agriculture. What does that conflict actually look like?
Well, it can range from caimans preying on livestock to just being seen as a nuisance or a threat to the people who live near them. I mean, they are large, powerful predators. It's understandable that their presence might cause some concern.
For sure. But it sounds like a tricky situation to navigate. How do you balance the need to protect these animals with the safety and livelihoods of the people who share their environment?
It's definitely a challenge, and there's no easy answer. One approach is to focus on education and awareness. By teaching people about their behavior and how to coexist safely, it can often help to mitigate conflict.
So knowledge is power, even when it comes to caimans. But what about situations where education isn't enough? Are there any other strategies for addressing these conflicts?
Sometimes you need more proactive measures, relocating caimans that are causing problems or implementing strategies to kind of, deter them from certain areas.
Like what? Do they build caiman-proof fences or something?
Sometimes. But it's often about understanding their behavior and using that to our advantage. Like caimans are attracted to light, so minimizing light sources near livestock can reduce the risk of encounters.
So it's about using a combination of, like, knowledge, common sense, and a little ingenuity to find solutions that work for both caimans and humans.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between conservation and coexistence. And the Yacaré Caiman really shows us that it's possible.
Yeah, it's a hopeful reminder that even with all these complex challenges, there are paths to success.
And it really highlights how important it is to collaborate, to be innovative, and to be willing to change our approach as we learn more about these intricate relationships within ecosystems.
You know, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about how the Yacaré Caiman has gone from being seen as this dangerous pest to a valuable asset. What a transformation, huh?
It really is. And I think it says a lot about the power of changing perspectives and understanding how interconnected life on Earth really is.
I am curious about the long-term implications of their comeback, though. What does it mean for the Pantanal as a whole?
That's a great question. Their recovery is still fairly recent, so we're still learning about the full ecological impact.
But I imagine it's going to have, like, a ripple effect throughout the entire ecosystem.
Oh, almost certainly. As apex predators, their presence will influence the dynamics of the food web, potentially impacting everything from fish populations to even plant life.
And that could have implications for other species that share the pantanal, both good and bad.
Absolutely. It's a complex web of interactions, and we're really just beginning to understand all the connections. But one thing is for sure, their return is a big deal for the Pantanal. It's a significant event in the Pantanal story.
And it's a story that's far from over.
Indeed, the Pantanal, like all ecosystems, is constantly evolving. The Caiman's comeback is just one chapter in this much larger narrative.
So what does the future hold for the Yacaré Caiman and the pantanal?
Well, that's something that scientists and conservationists are actively trying to figure out. They're monitoring populations, studying how they interact with other species, and working hard to ensure that the balance of the ecosystem is maintained.
It sounds like there's still a lot to learn and a lot of work to do.
There is, but their story really gives us reason to be optimistic. It shows that with dedication, collaboration, and the willingness to adapt, we can find ways to protect the incredible biodiversity on our planet.
It's a powerful message of hope and something we should all take to heart. But before we get too philosophical, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the potential for conflict between caimans and humans.
Right, the challenges of coexistence. Definitely something we can't ignore.
Are there any specific examples of communities finding ways to live alongside these caimans without major issues?
There are actually. In some areas, people have adopted traditional practices to minimize the risk of conflict. For instance, in parts of the Pantanal, people avoid fishing or swimming in areas known to have lots of caimans.
So respecting their space and understanding their habits.
Exactly. And in some cases, communities have even figured out how to benefit from their presence without exploiting them.
Okay, now I'm really curious. How do you benefit from a caiman without, using it for things like leather or meat?
Well, in some areas, they've become a draw for ecotourism. People come from all over to see these amazing creatures in their natural habitat that can bring in income for local communities, and it also provides an incentive for conservation.
That's fantastic. It turns a potential threat into an economic opportunity and raises awareness about their importance.
It's a reminder that conservation can take many forms, and that sometimes the best solutions are the ones that find these creative ways to align human interests with the needs of the natural world.
Such an important point. It's about finding those win-win scenarios where both people and nature can thrive.
It's about realizing that we're all part of the same ecosystem and that our fates are intertwined.
That's a pretty powerful message to take away from our deep dive into the world of the Yacaré Caiman.
It is. And I think it really speaks to these broader challenges and opportunities we face as we try to create a more sustainable future for the planet.
I'm honestly feeling pretty inspired right now.
As you should be. The Yacaré Caiman story is a testament to nature's resilience and the power of human ingenuity, especially when we choose to act as stewards of our environment.
It makes you wonder what other conservation success stories are out there waiting to be discovered and celebrated.
That's a great question, and one that I'd encourage our listeners to explore. There are countless examples of people working tirelessly to protect our planet's biodiversity. Their efforts deserve our attention and support.
I totally agree. But before we send everyone off on their own conservation quests, I think it's time to wrap up this particular deep dive.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've covered a lot today.
We have, from those impressive teeth to the amazing web of life in the Pantanal, we've really gotten to know the Yacaré Caiman.
And I hope our listeners have come away with a deeper appreciation for this incredible creature and why it's so important to protect them.
I have no doubt about that. But before we officially sign off, I want to touch on something we talked about a little earlier. The Yacaré Caiman's classification as least concern.
Right, their current conservation status. Important to remember what that actually means.
Because it doesn't mean they're totally in the clear, right?
Exactly. While they're not considered endangered anymore, there are still challenges. Habitat loss, potential for human-wildlife conflict.
So their future is still kind of uncertain.
To a certain extent, yes. Their continued survival really hinges on us continuing to protect them and their habitat.
A reminder that conservation is an ongoing process, not just a one-time fix.
Exactly. We can't afford to get complacent. Their success story is a testament to what's possible when we prioritize conservation, but it's also a call to action, to keep working to protect this amazing species and the whole Pantanal ecosystem.
That's a great note to end on.
I agree. And I hope our listeners will leave this deep dive feeling informed, inspired, and empowered to make a difference.
One of the things that really stuck with me is how even when a species is facing some serious threats, it's not like a hopeless situation. The Yacaré Caiman proves that with